Here we have a panel discussion on the future of e-commerce, what's on the horizon for brands in the new normal. This discussion will touch upon points like understanding changing consumer behavior, predicting future demand, usage of technologies like AR, VR, voice commerce, etc. I would like to invite Mr. Rajat Wahi, partner, Deloitte India, to moderate the discussion. Over to you, Mr. Wahi.
Good to be here on a very exciting topic in terms of the future of e-commerce, looking at what is on the horizon for brands in the new normal. Again, I don't, hate to define what the new normal is because every day we are finding a new normal emerging because of various lockdowns and re-lockdowns and reopenings. But we'll just sort of keep it as the new normal now. It seems to be the way of working going forward. So thank you, everybody. Lovely to be here today with a very, very interesting and diverse panel. My name is Rajat. I'm a partner with Deloitte in the consulting practice. And I will just ask all the panelists, starting with Dinesh, as I see you on the screen, just to start a brief introduction about yourself, and then we'll just go around the table, and then we can get into the questions and discussions for today. So Dinesh, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat. Hi, I'm Dinesh Agarwal at indiamart.com. It's a B2B marketplace for Indian businesses.
Thanks, Vipul.
Hi guys, my name is Vipul Prakash and I work with GoMMG and I'm a reasonably recent entrant to the e-commerce market.
Thanks, Vipul. Robert.
Hi everyone, Rob Menzies. I lead e-commerce for Godrej Consumer Products Limited. So selling Godrej brands through marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart and e-grocers like Big Basket and Grofers.
Thank you. Sanjay.
Hi, thanks, Rajat. Hi, this is Sanjay. I am the CEO and founder of shopclues.com. It's a B2C marketplace, mostly for tier 3, tier 2 cities, low price points. And I'm also the CEO of a logistics company called Momoi.
Thanks, Sanjay. Kavita.
Hey, thanks, Rajat. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kavita. I lead the business functions across IKEA, which includes sales, marketing, customer, home furnishing, and of course, the e-commerce business. Delighted to be here today.
Thanks. And Vinod?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Vinod Chandramouli, and I lead the e-commerce and media practice for Freshworks.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. And just look forward to a very interesting discussion. We'll try and keep it free flowing and sort of, hopefully it'll be a lot of knowledge and learning for all the sort of, all the listeners who are going to tune in on the 27th. So I'm just going to start with you, Robert, just looking at, given the growth of omni-channel over the last, 12 to 18 months, and I think the COVID has been actually tailor-made for online businesses more than offline businesses because so many of the malls and high streets and offline retail was shut. I mean, what are some of the things that you're looking at from a demand planning and forecasting point of view? Do brands and retailers have a single view of customer? We keep talking a lot about that. If I'm shopping across multiple channels today, do you have a single view of me as a customer, or do you look at me as per channel? And how do you use that? And what is it that you're using to drive better forecasting and demand, and availability and fulfillment at the other end?
Yeah, it's a very important topic. I think one thing to keep in mind as an FMCG company, our demand is from our retail partners. So it's a sort of B2B type of demand that we're trying to predict. And really it's a bit of a perfect storm when it comes to demand planning. You've got very volatile demand, whether it's due to COVID or just due to the seasonality that happens on e-commerce platforms with different events. You've got very wide assortments. You have some logistical constraints sometimes at our customers because of the fast growth that we've seen in e-commerce. And all of that put together makes it a very difficult challenge for demand planning. I think on the plus side, we do get a lot of really rich data in this space. It's a data-rich space. Our retail partners are quite generous, actually, in terms of sharing back granular and real-time data with us. And so there's a lot of work going on in the world of analytics saying, can we take that data and really put that into some pretty robust models and use that to predict demand? What we've found is the trick is certainly doing that, but also layering on a significant amount of judgment, right? So combining that high volume structured data that you'll get from your retail channel with a lot of judgment about what is really going on in the market, certain one-off events that could be happening, putting together the man and the machine and trying to come up with a good forecast. So I think that's the challenge. It's a work in progress for us. It's certainly not an easy task, particularly when you have big tailwinds from COVID and then headwinds when offline opens up again. It's definitely a volatile situation.
And good to hear that the retailers are sharing valuable data, because that really helps you also plan inventory.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Various factories have been shutting down at various points. Various towns have shut down, cities have shut down, within city locations have shut down. So I think I'm sure that must be quite like you said, a perfect storm to manage that.
Absolutely.
And so Sanjay, just coming to you on this point, how are you guys managing it at ShopClues, given that demand is suddenly surging in certain areas, and as the demand surges, the actual town may go into a lockdown? How do you manage during all of this time the whole demand fulfillment piece, and what are you doing to drive the whole single view of customer and to enable that?
Massive learning experience for us. When COVID first happened, I clearly remember it was 28th March 2020 when the PM announced lockdown in Delhi or across the country pretty much. And for 2 days, we had no idea. We were like chicken with no head, running around. But we've come a long way since then. Of course, there was a lot of uncertainty when COVID happened. India is very COD heavy country, and when it comes to online retail, cash on delivery is a very important aspect of buying for the consumer. Yeah. And we depend very heavily on collection of money, with physical contact. So that was a big, a googly that came our way. Then, of course, as normally happens, a lot of confusion was created with essentials and non-essentials, multiple layers of complication of what is essential, what is not essential. If my phone dies, if my phone dies, is cable essential, or only you can buy 15 different versions of dal, but you can't buy a mobile charger if your phone doesn't work. There was huge confusion, but the fact is that all said and done, we were net beneficiary of COVID when it happened. I mean, the business went down to zero for a few days and then came back. It took almost 2 months, 3 months for us to recover. But what we've realized is that it has left a little bit of a lasting impact on the consumer. Of course, every time lockdown happens, you can see an impact on the online world, and when the market opens up, we see the dip again. But I would say still that consumer is as impacted as businesses, and people who have been able to, who were digitally native, who were able to see this as an opportunity, were are able to do a better job of this. Of course, digital natives had the ability to have a common view of the consumer across platforms, across channels, and they could leverage that more during this time. It was easier for them to do. But I've seen so many examples where people with legacy systems were also able to turn things around and start seeing consumer as a unit. So, I mean, I've seen people on all sides. For us, I would just say COVID has, with all its trouble, I think was I would say a welcome change.
Thanks. Yeah, like I've heard on various platforms, 2030 came in 2020 from a technology point of view, right? Everybody upscaled very quickly and everybody did that. So Kavita, coming to you, strong offline retailer, building online presence as well, big store in one city, moving to Mumbai, setting up a whole new model. What were some of the challenges from your perspective in building this out at this time, rolling out to new operations and setting up, from a demand fulfillment point of view, and also from a point of view of sort of, looking at reaching out to your customers across the country from a single point, from a demand fulfillment perspective?
Sure, Rajat, that's a very interesting question and very good to hear the different perspectives from the panelists. I think at the outset, we all agree that forecasting is a science based on past data, but I would say that the pandemic has rendered that completely useless. What is also interesting for us as a home furnishing retailer is that because all of us have been spending so much time at home, somewhere the home has taken a lot of mind share. And the question that has been there in front of us is, has that actually translated into wallet share in terms of consumers actually buying more home furnishing, either online or in the physical formats? So interestingly, we have seen three important trends when it comes to both forecasting as well as fulfillment. One is there was a normal seasonality in the business that was there, but the COVID waves have actually impacted that seasonality, which means we've had to rethink our models when it came to estimating demand. The second important aspect has been the speed of digital adoption. I think it is interesting to see that it has moved very fast. In fact, I was reading the report another day which said that from about 100 million e-commerce users in India, we've actually, during the COVID timeframe, gone to about 150 million. That's a big jump, right? So there are a lot of people who come on to the e-commerce channel itself. The third interesting thing for us has also been related to the mix. What categories are being bought online, and is that different from the categories that were being bought in the physical stores? So these are three important trends that we've seen which have actually had an impact on both forecasting as well as the fulfillment side of things. But actually, I would also highlight one point in the context of fulfillment, because we've also seen a lot of supply side challenges. There have been various kinds of disruptions. There have been challenges with raw materials. There have been manufacturing units that have been closed. There have been transportation issues globally at this point in time. And of course, the last mile in the context of e-commerce has also been impacted. So in all, it has been quite a big challenge in terms of creating and planning for the right fulfillment capacities. And as you rightly said, at IKEA, we are in the early stages of our journey and establishing a presence in India. So it is both of those factors which have also contributed to that. I would also say that the single customer view perspective has really helped us, because it has really helped us understand what the customer journeys are, when are customers shopping online, and when are the same customers actually visiting a physical format. It is still early stages, but we believe that we can draw a lot of interesting conclusions on consumer behavior basis that. So it's a very, very interesting place to be in for us at this point. But the positive side of the whole aspect has been the fact that as a home furnishing retailer, the fact that home has assumed center stage has been a big positive for us.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, I think, like you said, the whole piece around what new categories are being shopped and the number of new customers who've come online. I mean, clearly it's changed the way. And so that just lead. I mean, so we're not just coming to you on that point. How have you seen it? You're advising Freshworks. How do you see that part evolving? The whole challenges around the supply side of demand. One is obviously the demand forecasting, and then once you have a good view of the customer and their demand, how are you guys managing it in terms of the whole demand planning piece?
Yeah. Before I answer that, Kavita, I was at IKEA all of yesterday, and for the first time in my life, and I thoroughly loved it. And I think it's an iconic here in Hyderabad. So kudos to you and your organization for building such a great experience. It was a great primer for this meeting. But yeah, I think,
for that.
But from a COVID perspective, Rajat, very similar to how families were brought together and put in one room. I sort of feel like businesses were also sort of brought together, and departments within these businesses were also asked to really put up together. And that had opened the conversation of the big elephant in the room every time you ask from a vendor perspective, right? So we are a vendor. When we go and usually talk to the CX level people, or even the IT managers or customer care folks, often they wouldn't want to bring the other issues, the data being shared with marketing, the data being shared with sales and everything. So the short answer to your question is, people who did not have the omni-channel view right before COVID struggled the most than people who actually had some semblance of that. And that was very evident when the number of queries which came in were not, could we be omni-channel? How soon can we become omni-channel? And that became a big sort of a conversation over the last at least 24 months of COVID. So I definitely see that, 2-3 years ago, I was up on stage talking about the difference between hybrid versus omni. Or multi-channel versus omni-channel. And I don't think it's no longer credible to speak about that because omni-channel is taken here. And I also include an offline store as a channel as well, right? So that those things have completely gone. We're definitely seeing an incredible push in omni-channel, single view, leaders in this space who've come out to be leaders, organizations who are joining us in this webinar today are definitely leaders because of the single view they have about their customers. So I absolutely think that omni-channel is here to stay.
Well, great to hear that. And I think there's some really interesting point in terms of, looking at the various departments talking more to each other, because I think COVID really forced, because the way supply chain was operating in a different, and sales and marketing and distribution, everybody used to operate in silos. And I think this COVID really forced everybody to sit down together and say, how do we solve it together? Most companies I've talked to have given similar feedback that, everybody worked much more tightly together, and maybe there was a dropping of walls between them. Vipul, coming to you on this, how have you seen, we keep talking about changed consumer behavior, once, a lot of these changes are permanent. You guys are pretty much an online player, one of the largest players in India from that perspective. And how real do you think these changes are from an online perspective? Is shopper behavior likely to remain the same? Or are we likely to see, as the stores are opening, people will go back to the, offline shopping, and then online will continue to be part of the portfolio? If we just look at data coming from the US, Netflix and all, losing thousands of consumers every day, 500,000 dropping out of some of these OTT platforms on a monthly basis. So I think there is likely to be some change. So it'd be good to get your thoughts on that.
Well, that's great. And it's strange that I actually spent a lot of my career in the offline space. And when I came to online, I thought it would be a different world. But surprise, surprise, the fundamentals of the consumer behavior do not change. And that's something which I'm absolutely convinced. You can call it whatever, but it's all about a discovery. It's all about the evaluation of the choices, the final choice, and post-sale. That doesn't change. I think what a discontinuity like COVID does, it maybe just exposes or forces the customer to do another choice and another channel in the mix. And whether COVID, when it goes back, what happens? I think that ultimately, whichever channel is able to fundamentally take care of the consumer needs is what will survive. Of course, everything will survive. Okay. So I think it will be, and it's a bit linked to your first question, that, why is Omni the new word? It's not because it's a new buzzword. It's because the customer is the same one. At the end of it, it is when the customer pays that every transaction ends. So what is the journey of the customer? Is it an Omni journey or something? I think is a secondary level, important to us. So the way we would like to do it is, yes, we are seeing more customers exploring online. The way I would like to look at it for an organization like us, that it's an opportunity for us to drive home the advantage we can give to the customer in terms of the value. It is not against the offline world, and I'll say everything will always have a role. The same customer will behave differently in a different environment. If I look at our thing, if I am taking a business trip somewhere, my behavior might be very different rather than if I'm taking my parents to a pilgrimage. Very different. And therefore, trying too hard sometimes to get into this online offline thing can actually be counterproductive. So the way we like to do it is really give the consumer what he or she is looking for. There will be some advantages which we have. If you're looking for a hotel, we can show you the photographs and the reviews of 20 hotels, where you can look at customers like you and decide which one is the best for you. So the richer we make your journey, the less liable you will be to go to alternative channels, which are there. So I think we really focus on that part of it and let the result be the result of how rich we make the customer journey.
Absolutely fantastic point. I think in our minds, we keep saying omni, offline, online, but the customer wants a product. He or she wants it then and now. Whoever fulfills it the fastest, the most efficient way, at the best price, the value and easy delivery, that channel wins, right? So be it your neighborhood kirana or another mall in a store in a mall or online, from a customer's point of view, it's not so omni, so clearly is demarcated. Having said that, India is still 90% an offline market, right? So Robert, coming to you on that, we are primarily 90% is offline. Only, or actually not 90, in fact, 94% or 97% is offline, only 3% is online. And even in the US, after all the noise, we are 25% of US retail is online, 75% is still offline. Even in China, it's what, 25 or 30%. So we have globally, it's still pretty much a offline play, right? So how do you see that changing? What do you see as lasting sort of behaviors that are likely to impact, especially categories like yours, which are more FMCG, just to be good to hear from you.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really important point that you made, that online is really, and I can speak to FMCG, online is a very small part of the market today. In different categories, it's different, but it would range from as low as 1 or 2% in certain categories up to 10%, but it's not the majority of any of those categories. No doubt, as other panelists have said, that the lockdowns did give a boost to online. So those sort of penetrations would have ticked up a bit, but even if 50% more are shopping online, that's a sort of 5% becoming a 7.5%. We need to bear that in mind. Also, a couple of observations about what happened in the lockdowns, and this is probably particularly true of the first lockdown. One is that the traditional trade, the humble kirana, actually showed a huge amount of agility, ingenuity, commitment to keeping business going, even in the very challenging conditions of the lockdown. And I think it was quite impressive to see, and I think that inspired quite a lot of respect and appreciation from the shoppers and consumers that these guys had sort of put themselves on the line, got out there and kept the product flowing even in the middle of a big lockdown. So I think that was one observation. And the second observation is that the online shopper experience honestly was not always ideal, and I think that's despite enormous, massive efforts going in from brands like us, from retailers on the ground. Anyone who tried to order during the height of the lockdown would have seen, as other panelists have mentioned, confusion between essentials, non-essentials. We had situations where trucks full of soap, hand wash, and hand sanitizers were not permitted to deliver because essentials was interpreted as being food and not non-food, right? So that kind of operational disruption that Kavita was also talking about, that led to, in some cases, not the ideal consumer or shopper experience in the online channel. And hence, although definitely a huge tailwind, no denying that, we have seen that as cities have opened up again post-lockdowns, there has been a significant reversion back to offline channels. So sort of the way I think about it is there has been a big forced trial of online. It has accelerated the evolution towards online, but it's still early days, and maybe we're a year or two ahead of where we would have been without a pandemic, but that's the sort of scale of the impact that it's had.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, great points, and absolutely, essential versus non-essentials, FMCG role. Clearly it has given a impetus to all categories, right? Even categories people were never willing to try online. People are experimenting it, be it furniture, be it accessories, clothes, etc. And again, just taking that forward, from our perspective, Kavita, coming to you on this, how do you see that play out? How lasting do you think is, and what's the focus from an IKEA perspective of the online play? Has that changed the strategy for you in terms of going forward, or is it still very much an offline experience leading to online? Just your thoughts on that.
Sure, Rajat. I think we are definitely seeing some changes in consumer behavior. And just mentioning the last point you mentioned, categories which were traditionally considered offline, home furnishing was one of them. People always spoke about touch and feel and trying things out before they actually made a high value purchase of a furniture or something of that sort. But what we are really seeing is in recent times, on the backdrop of the pandemic, people have gotten more comfortable buying more categories online. And that's an interesting trend. In the past, you would have said that people always wanted to try out a sofa, sit on it, touch the fabric of the sofa maybe before they bought it. And now sofa is the category which is selling quite extensively online. So that is a very, very interesting trend for us to watch out for. And then, of course, if you look at accessories in the context of home furnishing, it was a lot more of an impulse category that people were very comfortable buying online in the past as well. But then there is also the more complex side of things. For example, if you start to look at wardrobes and kitchens, those are high involvement purchases. In most cases, consumers in India might not have the confidence to plan, look at designing a wardrobe or a kitchen and being able to actually put it together. In those cases, we definitely see consumers still wanting a lot of support. What is also interesting is from our end, we have also looked at customer journeys and tried to add a lot more of services to support customers through the different shopper journeys. Also, because as some of the panelists mentioned, there were a lot of digital native shoppers who were coming online, but there were a big chunk of non-natives who were starting to shop online for the first time as well. So interestingly, what we are seeing for the future is, again, three key trends, if I can mention that. People who have moved online, they have discovered the convenience, they have shopped online many times and will continue to stay online, right? Then there is the second concept of, if you look at a category like home furnishing, maybe people looked at buying home furnishing maybe 3 or 4 times a year. The question in front of us is, in the future, will it lead to a situation where customers will go to a physical format maybe only 2 times a year, and they would shop online 3 times a year? The need for home furnishing still stays the same, but maybe the number of trips or the number of interactions with a home furnishing retailer in this case changes, with maybe a higher proportion of online visits. The third expectation is that there will be some people who will actually find physical format and physical retailing much more comfortable, and post the pandemic will actually return back and only shop in the physical format. But if you put all of these three variables together, we are expecting that we will actually see an increase in online shoppers, and we will see some solid growth on the e-commerce front. But the physical retailing business will continue to increase. Overall, again, because of the category home furnishing, where people have started to discover the needs related to the home much more in the COVID context. So that is what we are thinking of at this point in time. But all of this at this stage is an hypothesis, and we need to really figure out what happens in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Very, very, very true. And all of these are very valid points as we move forward, right? New categories, more experimentation, but the experience of buying still stays. So Dinesh, I'm come to you on this. How have you seen a change for your business? And how do you see that, is the shopper behavior going to continue to be like that? What are you betting on? More online, and then or along with some experience stores offline to create the touch and feel? What are the thoughts on that?
So I echo the sentiments of everybody, but at the same time, when we say it's just 5% online, actually it is probably 25% online research and online previewing and lead generation, and only 5% end up probably actually making a payment online. So there is a huge percentage of people who have shifted, because there are 500 million users and almost 250 million users visit e-commerce portals like maybe Amazon, maybe IndiaMart, maybe Just Dial, maybe Google, even for that, Google Shopping. And they all do pre-research to find the right kind of product, whether or not that product is available at a click of a button or at a convenience of a immediate delivery. They can still make a call to the neighborhood supplier or a remote supplier, and things have become easier. People will pay through later on. People can pay through multiple payment options like UPI and NEFT and RTGS. At the same time, multiple delivery channels have opened up. So you can do a Dunzo, you can do a WeWork, and you can also do a ShipRocket, and you can also do a delivery. So I think the overall adoption has increased definitely by 50%, but not at the base of 5%. I would say it was already at 10-15%, and it has probably gone to 20-30% right now. So the channels or the marketeers will have to look at not only finally consuming the or finally doing the payment online, but also a experience. Also, what has happened with the internet being there, the price opacity which used to exist in a large country like India, because something is available in Delhi Chandni Chowk at a very different price, and Indore at a very different price, or our offline channel at a very different price. So I think it is going to become very different and very challenging for omni-channel or large players to be able to adopt into all these these emerging trends. I think it is not only about pandemic. Pandemic has just given a push, but there are 50 million small and medium enterprise, and as Robert said, that they've shown a lot more agility, a lot more, because they are very hungry. Their lives are dependent on that small business, and there are so many machine part makers, so many raw material makers. All of that is actually not talked about when we talk about general e-commerce. We still limit ourselves to electronics and apparel and FMCG maybe. That's about it. But there is a huge number of categories, and they will continue to do more research, more lead gen, more offline contact, and that's the thesis behind IndiaMart, and that's the thesis behind Google as well.
A very interesting point. Absolutely. The number of research, the B2B play, which we don't look at overall e-commerce, the number of small enterprises that are getting online, and also everybody pretty much using online now, and the price opacity versus price transparency is a big play as well, right? We had, and the other part is returns. I mean, in India, we just didn't have a culture of returns of products. Now, suddenly, thanks to e-commerce players, every offline retailer also has to offer much better services. So you are judged based on, e-commerce has really set the bar in terms of customer service, affordability, reach, availability, the whole reverse logistics, big play there. So Sanjay, coming to you, and let's talk about this, continue this on this vein. Where do you think, if I look at 3 years from now, 5 years from now, where do you think is the online play likely to be in a market like India? Do you see this continue to accelerate to get to 20-25%? Where do you think the sort of, what is the role offline will have versus in the overall sort of retail play in India?
So Rajat, I think some of these points, I think both Kavita and Dinesh have already kind of given a view of what the world would be in coming days. I think pandemic gave us a little bit of a view through a crystal ball where we could see into the future, how things could shape up. I think one thing is very clear, that I think these lines are getting a little bit fuzzy, online, offline. I think these strict demarcations mindset, I think, will be detrimental to business, I think, going forward. If you look at 1 year, 1 year I think is already here. I think we are seeing certain categories that have opened up. Kavita was mentioning IKEA has been a beneficiary of certain categories that were not really conducive to online shopping. People have started adopting that. I think people also mentioned, and Make My Trip has already been doing many things, but their hotel packages and stuff, I believe people are more inclined now to buy experiences online. Earlier they would walk into a travel agent and actually talk to them. So I think where I'm going with this is that I think businesses, both whether it is a Kirana, which I think has been very, like everybody's mentioned, has been very innovative, and then forward looking, is adopting technology, much more quickly and open arms than many other established players. I think consumer behavior will continue to expect convenience. If the convenience available online, they will go online. If it's available offline, I think that is where they will go. They would demand a certain amount of familiarity with the businesses. You don't forget me when I'm online. When you see me, say hi, Sanjay. When you come online, and when I walk into your store, I'm nobody, and vice versa. Some people will, offline players. I think so where I'm going with this, I think for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, I think these lines will become more and more fuzzy, and adoption is going to. There was some study I was recently seeing which said that 10% of everybody who's online will buy online. So, there was a time in India also, we have early adopters of chat, Facebook, social media, but they were not transacting online consumers. But across the world, on an average, 10% of everybody who is online will actually transact online. So, it is very clear that that's going to happen. But just taking that single point of view of this demarcation of online, offline might not be the right question to ask. I think it will be a unified approach to a consumer.
Okay, makes sense. Absolutely. Clearly the single view of customer, and from a customer's point of view, the journey never ends, right? You can be offline in a store and buy online from there, or you can buy offline, go in the store to collect. So all models are merging, right? And I think that the retailers need to also get a sense of that. But clearly, one model will not be the only model, right? They just everybody will be online and nobody will go offline. I mean, even in developed markets, we are seeing, and even in India, you'd look at a lot of online players which are setting up offline stores. I'm sure you guys have looked at it or are doing that as well, because there is a way to get onto to a high street, set up an endless aisle type of a store, just to get a bit of that touch and feel. Also to have that, especially for certain complex categories, to have that interaction. So I'll come to you, Robert, on that. Where do you guys see your business, FMCG, much more difficult? Cost of last mile, the cost to serve is very high for last mile delivery. If I have to order a detergent or a toothpaste, how do you make that work if it's not a subscription model? So where do you see that going from your perspective, online, offline? And we'll keep talking about it in terms of demarcated channels. But how do you see that evolving for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, echoing what other panelists have said, definitely. Everything is blurring. I think one example that really sums it up in a grocery sense is what JioMart is looking to build, right? And that JioMart model is both B2C and B2B. It's offline and online. It's general trade and it's modern trade. It's almost the whole thing put together. And I think that's reflective of where shopper behavior is going and where consumer behavior is going too. I think from an FMCG perspective, it's important to think through not only online and offline merging, but actually what we would traditionally call sales and what we would traditionally call marketing are also merging too. Dinesh was talking about the phenomenon of ROPO, as we call it, research online, purchase offline, which is a huge phenomenon. And as big FMCG brands, you can't afford to think about the e-commerce channel as being 5% of your sales, 7% of your sales. It is much more significant than that when you think about the position it has earlier on in the shopper journey. So I think that's important. And probably specific to FMCG that you already alluded to, Rajat, is this whole point of the ratio of logistics cost to the low price points that most FMCG products are. And I think that's another force which will push us more towards an omni-channel world. It really doesn't make that much sense to ship 200 rupee products from one warehouse across the country, right? But clearly, that's not an efficient way of fulfilling demand. And hence, a lot of models, it's happening in other parts of the world. If you look at the Walmart success in e-commerce in the US, if you look at what Alibaba's done with Ling Shutong in China, where they are co-opting small offline retailers into their online ecosystem, a lot of people are moving in that direction in India too. I don't think anyone's fully cracked it, but certainly my point of view is that for FMCG, there will have to be leverage of sort of offline infrastructure to fulfill online orders, because that's going to be a way to essentially to sell low price point products online efficiently.
Quick thought on where do you see this Kirana adoption of technology, right? Because the Kirana guy is a pretty smart guy. He's currently got 20 suppliers. The last thing he wants to do is get tied into one supplier supplying him everything. Plus, FMCG brands don't want to give up a hold on their distribution networks they've built over the last 20 years. How do you think that's going to play out for a Reliance or anybody trying to co-opt the whole piece? You think that's a realistic model for them to want to give up their freedom and so many sources of supply, etc., the price arbitrage?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one because there's some pretty strong forces in favor for the Kirana owner, right? The idea of being able to be delivered much more frequently with a bigger drop and therefore holding less inventory, that definitely improves his economics as a retailer. And just the admin burden of dealing with many different distributors from lots of different brands goes down if you source from Reliance B2B and Amazon B2B, Big Basket, Udans of the world. However, you're right that there are significant resistances to it, whether it's not wanting to be reliant, whether it's around compliances and that kind of thing as well. The traditional distributor is quite effective at managing credit to Kiranas as well, and can the more formal guys manage that as effectively? So short answer is I don't know. I think there's very strong forces in both directions. It's not been a big tipping point so far. I think where these guys are penetrating lots of outlets, if you look at their numbers, but it's typically with at the top up part of the demand from the Kirana, the last 5%, and not the bulk of what they're purchasing.
Absolutely. And that'll be an interesting play to see, because I talk a lot to Kiranas and distributors, and it's a real mix in terms of where that's going. Vinod, coming to you on this, where do you see that evolving in terms of, just anything you want to add on to the conversation already in terms of 1, 3, 5 years in online versus offline? how much of that conversion are we likely to see, especially in small categories like FMCG and others? Larger categories, probably bigger play. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I want to draw some parallels and analogy here. Think about online as a business wasn't around until 12 years ago, when iPhone pushed a lot of mobile phones. And the last 2 years have had wild ride of what online is, what e-commerce is, and there's been so many categories. As we grow, as we think about who's buying online, the more millennials pushing through and the more experiences they get around the ecosystem, we feel like there is going to be a lot more expectation online. It's almost a forced behavior they would want. My 17-year-old son in 5 years is going to have enough wallet share to be able to spend. Now, at that point, they are going to expect the brand to be able to tell them what that experience should look like. I almost call it a forced behavior or a forced loyalty, right? Because that's the research. That's how upfront are you? How much are you on my social media? How much are you as part of a trend? And all of that really would matter when the online business does pick up. What that also means is they are going to look at experiences, which could also mean offline. So the offline and online thing is here to stay, right? I want to take again IKEA as an example because it's fresh off of my mind. I would thoroughly enjoy shopping online on IKEA, especially when on a Saturday evening, my wife and I could sit down and decide what we want. But the whole idea of walking to IKEA, touch and feel, and all of that is real. And it felt very real even after post-pandemic. So I don't think that equation is going to go away. The second point I also want to make, Robert spoke about it, and also I think Dinesh made a really good point, is the lines are blurring between sales and marketing, but then the lines are also blurring between sales, marketing, and post-sales support as well. And that is becoming a big differentiator, which is how are you taking care of me as a customer? And what sort of insights could you provide back to me about myself is very important, right? I mean, I thoroughly enjoy my annual Swiggy emails I get on how many orders have I made, and all of those are data which is being crunched and positioned back so you could drive it. So I kind of feel like the online part of it, as businesses don't focus on online experience, the back-end online experience becomes really crucial and important. Your supply chain, your whole ecosystem, that's a part and that's a piece which will push the online growth for brands and businesses, and I kind of feel. And then the third is, irrespective of offline or online, customer is no longer the king. I kind of feel customers' data is the new king. And that data becomes very, very crucial, however you collect, right? I mean, these Kirana stores used to write it in your, I still remember in a piece of paper, stuff like Khata book and all of that have come and rechanged the way they want to push online. That data is getting pushed. So we see tremendous amount of customers and brands from at least a vendor perspective focus on what data to collect where, and they want to almost build out a business plan around the data as well. So I see these three sort of push online and offline together. So it's now, one single view, and I kind of feel these trends would drive it, Rajat.
Thanks, Vinod. Great points. And I think the point that Robert also mentioned, it's not, and Dinesh mentioned earlier, it's not just the buying, but it's also you are getting much earlier involved online with the shopper in any case, from the research perspective, anything they want to buy. So Dinesh, coming to you on this, where do you see that from an India Mart point of view? Are you guys looking at a strong offline presence as well? Have lots of stores to also drive footfalls on high streets? So is it a pure online model? Because I mean, I don't know, sorry, how many stores you currently have, may already have that. How do you see that in 3, 5 years time? And where is your sort of mind at in that space?
So Rajat, let me first clarify, we don't sell anything.
You're a platform. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we are just an aggregator of people. So we have Tata Motors and Tata Steel as our customers, as well as the neighborhood, manufacturer or a wholesaler or a retailer as our customer. One of the things that I see that between the offline and between the online, there's a huge conversational commerce which is there. Where you. So because if you go to an Amazon or a Flipkart, you cannot have any conversation. You just either can, even on a make my trip app, for example, or you can have a conversation with the aggregator only. Now there are, you want to have a conversation with Tata Motors saying that where can I get this particular model, where what is the discount available, what is the financing available. So we see that lot many brands are going to now put up their entire dealership distribution network available on the online, so that they can be immediately contacted. To take an example of Meesho. So Meesho is all about conversation, though they have a catalog, but people are buying more because they trust each other and they are able to suggest and recommend. One of the things that I found that on IndiaMart or on Make My Trip, you can have 20 hotels or 20 suppliers of that. But for me to be able to make a decision just like that and is difficult. So I want to have some conversation to see what kind of service are you going to provide? Can you provide a home delivery? Can you just deliver to home and then I can pay not a proper COD, but it's just your neighborhood guy just sending his boy and delivering. So I think there is a huge chunk in between, which is neither going to be a pure online nor going to be a pure offline. And that there is I think there is lesser glamour that has been put into this whole piece. Because people just love that, okay, buy now, pay now, COD. Or people just say that, okay, advertise marketing. But sales and distribution has to get inside the whole online piece, and your distribution channel and your sales channel should be able to take advantage of your marketing and be able to push it, because for you, at the end of the day, the whole objective is to sell. Whether he sells it buy now, pay now, or whether he walks into the store, or whether he talks to one of your dealers or distributors, any of that is possible. So I think it is going to evolve big time over a certain, and that is where WhatsApp is coming in between. So I think
absolutely.
what we are looking at IndiaMart is an entire conversational commerce piece. Whatever you can just do buy now, because then you restrict your categories to a very minimal set of categories, or restrict your audience to a very minimal set of audience. Many times I might have done a lot of research on Make My Trip, but at the end of the day, I would have end up calling the hotel or end up calling the travel agent. So I think that is where IndiaMart or these kind of people fit in, who are looking at the conversational commerce. And I think the brands have still not realized the value of the conversational commerce.
Yeah, very, very valid points. I mean, that's absolutely amazing, because a lot of that gets missed out, right? Because it's not quantified, or there's no value at this stage put on that. Kavita, anything you want to add to that piece? How do you guys look at the online play? What percentage do you think your business is likely to be in the next 1, 3, 5 years from an offline perspective?
Sure, Rajat. And I think it was very interesting to hear the perspectives. But what I also found from all the other panelists, what they said is the fact that each is coming from a different angle, and they are very distinct but related. So maybe I will bring in another dimension, because I've been reflecting on what is the optimal mix of online and offline, right? Is it about growth? Is it about customer experience? Or is it about profitability? Right? What do we define as optimal? But if we really start to look at it from a customer experience standpoint, I would say it's omni-channel all the way, right? And if you look at big box retailing in the past, most of the omni-channel big box retailers in the past, pre-COVID, maybe had 10 to 13% in terms of online sales as a percentage of the total sales. But of course, COVID has completely changed this. For us as a home furnishing retailer, we see that in the near term, maybe the 1 to 3 year time frame, it's more likely to be 20 to 25%. But maybe in the 3 to 5 year time frame, I would not be surprised if it is going to be a 30-35% in terms of the share of online as a percentage of total sales. But I really would like to go back to one comment that Vinod made, where he said that it is quite easy for us to sit at home and browse the IKEA website and do the same shopping. But maybe what is more interesting is maybe going to the store, because all of us as human beings look for the element of visualization and inspiration, right? And that is where physical retailing will continue to differentiate itself from online, right? Even with very good AR and VR technologies, it is still not mass today. And we're still not able to create the same kind of front-end user experience on the online front. And pretty much customer experience in the online context today is getting defined based on, was I able to place an order? Did I receive the order in the time when it was promised? And was I able to, if there was a sad flow, was I able to return the product in a good fashion? And was the organization responsive? But maybe if online really needs to grow bigger, there is the element of front-end user experience, the element of visualization and inspiration that we might really need to look at, right? Physical format retailing will continue to be big. And again, for us as a home furnishing retailer with a big box in the size of 40,000 square meters or 4 lakh square feet, what we are really talking about is even if we have a daily visitor rate of, let's say, 5,000 or 10,000 visitors, they disappear within the context of the store, right? And there are categories, as I mentioned before, a category such as a bedroom or a kitchen, where it is extremely important for services along with the products and the solutions to come together. So my own expectation is, even in the future, many years down the line, offline and physical format retailing will have its importance. As human beings, we are very visual and we look for inspiration. And then at some stage, as organizations wanting to run a sustainable, profitable, growing business, maybe we also want to manage the share of online and offline in terms of how we look at the long-term profitability of the business. So that's really how I would look at it.
Thanks, Kavita. And that's a real good inroad into the AR, VR part. Vipul, I'll come to you on that. I mean, holidays, curating holidays, experiences between Insta and social media and your websites. How are you guys using that to really, create that wow end consumer where I really want to get up and go for a holiday, or at least virtually understand where I'm going, because there's still quite a lot of missing parts in that, right? In that whole shopper journey on that. So your thoughts on that?
For sure. And Rajat, with your permission, before I just go to the question, I cannot resist a bit of a brand plug to what Dinesh was saying. Dinesh, totally agree with you on the conversational commerce. And actually, we have started, a chat thing where you can actually chat to hoteliers and all and ask your questions. Obviously, we haven't done a very good job of communicating this to loyal customers like you. So thanks for the feedback. I totally agree with you. So anyway, brand plug over.
You can take that offline with him as well and convince him.
I will absolutely. And this is the role of offline versus online. Anyway, so to your question, that is very interesting question. And I sincerely believe that when you talk about things like AI, we will know that a technology has arrived when people in the organization stop talking about it. Okay, and that's exactly the phase we are in today. 3 years ago, there used to be meetings and conferences where what is the role of AI and how do we use AI. Today, I can't remember any conversation where we are saying that how do we use AI. It's become a part of the fabric of the organization because AI is a technology to basically give the customer what they're looking for. And in some cases, it fails miserably. In some cases, it does extremely well. As a customer, I think Sanjay was saying that, when I go to a store, I want to be said, hi, Sanjay. Similarly, when they come onto our app, they want to be said, hi, Sanjay, we know what you are looking for. We know what you are used to. We know what your preferences are for the last 5 years. And you know what? We don't expect you to remember that. We will do that role for you. Okay. And then give you a recommendation. And it's not one Sanjay. When Sanjay goes out for a business trip, as I said, when Sanjay goes out with his family, they will have different choices. And I think the AI, the biggest tool which we are seeing is that take a lot of heavy lifting off our busy customer and do that heavy lifting for him or her to enable a better decision. And that's where we find the success today. And that is where I think is one of the best uses of technology. That all this data, technology and all, I think the problem starts when we start seeing this as the end. So I think that's the problem. That do you use AI? Do you use data? That's not important. It's data today. I mean, the same data. When I used to go to a travel agent, they also used to ask me who all is going, what is the sort of hotel you like. He was also collecting AI only. Just the thing. Today with technology, we can do a better job of it, and therefore make the life of the customer better. So I think these are all elements of online behavior which are not going to be fancy words, but which are going to get based and inherent to the experience of the customer. You may not know you are using AI, but everybody is using AI.
And some quick thoughts on AR, VR. I mean, how are you using AR, VR to augment a shopper journey on online when I'm looking for a holiday or a travel, work travel? How do you guys, are you using a lot of that? I mean, I've seen some of that on your website when I've searched, but it's not like that engaging at this stage. What are the thoughts on that?
No, so I think we have a lot of work to do on that. I think there is a great need. And I think as Kavita was saying, that is the closest experience. Today we show pictures of a room. Now we are working with our partners to can we give you a full 3D view of that room? Where you can say what is the view from the view from the balcony, what is the view from the shop. So I think there is a lot of work which has to be done. I think today that is one area where as bandwidth increases, as new technologies come in, I think the next step where I personally feel if we want to take the customer experience to the new level, we will have to invest in these, not in just the technology, but take it consumer out and really see what he or she is looking for. So work to be done there.
Thanks, Vipul. Sanjay, coming to you. We talk a lot about AI. I always say BI is missing. Basic information is always missing, but we are already on AI. But if I walk into any store, over this last 1 year, how many brands have reached out to me and said, we haven't seen you around. What can we do for you? Can we curate an experience for you? So I still think BI is missing, but we're all talking about AI. What is your thought on this? And where do we go from here in terms of this whole AI, AR, VR piece? And how do you guys look at it?
I mean, the only direction we can go on this is forward. I don't think there's any other direction we can go. I mean, I think Vipul was mentioning this. Now it is not part of the conversation. Technologies arrived when people kind of assume. I think there's some truth to that. Today it is like Dinesh was talking about conversational commerce, right? Which is also another form of community commerce where I want to maybe discuss with people who are experts before buying something whether this will work or not work. Today I do all of that. I go to certain blogs, read about whether this is something is right for me or not right for me, and I'm going beyond feedback that is left on the site. I want to get into a conversation with people. So all of this manifests itself as AI eventually. I mean, if you were to do it right, it is one thing if you miss my birthday and say, if you miss my birthday, I think it is totally okay. But if you wish me on the wrong day, I think that's a bigger problem. So I think the important point I'm trying to make is, when you, if you don't know the customer, it is okay. It is pardonable. But if you think you know the customer and you get it wrong, I think it becomes a problem. And I think that's where some of these technologies are helping. But specifically, I can give examples of Lululemon in the US. Great VR experience. Walk into the physical store. People are looking for experiential buying. In India, recently, I was working with a startup where I can buy a car through some video interface with the dealers, where I can actually get a 360 view of the car, and at the last stage, you can get a car for a test drive. I think these are great opportunities, and I think Vipul is mentioning, and Kavita mentioned those. And I think what Dinesh is also saying, that the gap of conversational commerce, I think today the tools and technologies have matured enough to provide you that. We do a lot of WhatsApp commerce. Every product that you see online can be bought in WhatsApp by sending a message. But the beauty is that we did not write the AI code for it. It was available as APIs through Facebook. Google has pretty decent visual recognition, facial recognition APIs that are available for people to use. I think it is becoming, I would not say commodity, but I think it is becoming a tool, if you don't use, will be used against you eventually. So I think it is important that we realize that the consumer is moving towards communal buying or conversational buying. I think not moving towards, that is their default status. For a period of time, we were seen in silos, but if I have a choice, I would like to discuss with people. I want to create that trust with the brand or with the community before I want to get into a purchase. I want experiences, whether it is by walking into a store, If I walk into a store, maybe I want to see how will this tool look in my house. And maybe there's a technology that actually says, okay, this table actually will look like this when it is, in my house, and vice versa also. When sitting at home, I want to see how that table looks. So, I mean, all of these technologies are opening categories that were not available earlier, or were available earlier, but its adoption was limited. I think people are taking larger bets now. So virtual reality, you go to Sephora site, for example, it is just beautiful. You see a beautiful mix of community and virtual reality coming together. I cannot imagine how good those products have become. I mean, I have tried buying hats, glasses, pretty good experience. I mean, and it is available to everybody now. So I think it is just matter of adoption. I think we have no choice but to start seeing what is available, and otherwise, if you don't use it, it will be a disadvantage for your business. So I think the writing is clearly on the wall.
Can I add something on here?
Sure, please.
Second,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
I think
please.
while we talk about AI and virtual realities, I think we are again having a very big blind spot in front of us, which is the voice and language and videos. You would have seen for a large population in India, YouTube has become a default search engine, because they don't want to read English or even read Hindi or even read Telugu. They just want to listen to the searches they want to do. So is your online experience offers a voice search, offers a video which can explain them rather than people reading them? Because all of this whole e-commerce was designed keeping computers in mind, and the computers were by default Roman and English. Now there is so much of voice usage possible, and so much of language usage possible now, Indic language usage possible. I think a lot of brand and a lot of online companies are missing out on that. We have everything in English or everything in difficult Hindi or difficult Telugu, but still don't have a very good voice thing. Another thing, when people type or when people do, they make a lot of mistakes. So when you are searching, so for example, when we did a research, we found that people use 300 different spellings of the word jewelry to search jewelry on Internet. Now, 300 different. And I'm talking only in Roman language, not talking about Hindi or other scripts. Now, can you handle that much? And Google does a very good job, great job on that. But I don't think any of the e-commerce guys do a very good job of handling misspells, handling Hindi written in Roman. So, for example, when you write Haldi, can you write HALDI, and will your commerce platform recognize that? Because we all the time on WhatsApp, on email, we keep writing Hindi within in Roman thing, and similarly Telugu in Roman thing. Now it is very unique to India. It is not common outside of India. So I think we are missing on using our language and mixed language systems. I'm forced to speak only English here in this forum. Otherwise, in a natural setting, I would have spoken Hindi and English in every sentence. So I think, and when we write also, it is no longer a pure English Roman. We search also so many words which are Hindi words in Roman thing. I think a lot of blind spot is written there.
Very, very important. And especially vernacular and the whole conversational commerce. If you just look at China, the amount of conversational commerce messaging on using voice rather than typing out, we are still sort of, learning that. I think we are at the end of our session. So I'm just going to go around the table, starting with Vipul, just some last thoughts around, some of the two big trends that you see coming out of this as we look forward to the whole e-commerce play and the whole online, future of e-commerce, online, offline play.
I think I think one thing which will happen is I can see a definite trend in online brands, companies focusing just not on acquisition, but on profitability. And when I say profitability, I think to me, profitability is the result of you adding value to the customer journey. And I think therefore, what I look is, you can do something for a transient basis and all. But if you want to be long-term sustainable, then you should have confidence in your offering to the customer to be able to, charge him or her for the services. And if you do that well, then you will ultimately also become a sustainable business. So I think this is one area which I believe a lot of companies will look towards, not just be obsessed with the but the bottom line in terms of the P&L, but what are we adding to the customer journey? And if we are confident that we are adding something, or that something could be convenience, could be customer care, could be good pricing, could be a collection of whatever it could be. I think it will force us, all of us, to be very clear what is our moat. And once we define that moat well, I think converting it into profitability should be a relatively easier exercise.
Thanks, Vipul. Robert, your thoughts? Two sort of key trends coming out of this.
Yeah, I think we've we've said it. The future is certainly omni. It's a cliche, but that's definitely where it's heading. Whether we're talking about communicating with shoppers and consumers or how they buy products, for sure. Something though that I think stays the same and can get lost amidst all the new stuff that's happening, disruption, fast-moving trends, is that certainly in FMCG categories, it will still be that the only moat in the end will be deep understanding of consumers in the categories that you're playing in, combined with a deep understanding of the relevant technology, the product technology, combined with the ability to communicate very compellingly with your consumers and shoppers. And I think it's very important that FMCG companies stay very much focused on that, while of course adding all of these digital native skills to the armory. But I think staying focused on the consumer in the categories that you play in will always be the trend, certainly in FMCG.
Thank you. Kavita, coming to you.
Yeah, I would really agree with that, Robert. I would say it's omni-channel all the way. As retailers, what we can really do is to create the possibilities, and then the customer finally makes the choice in terms of how they want to meet and interact with a brand or a retailer. I also feel that technology is great. There are a lot of advancements that are happening, but one important test is how is it enabling the business, either in terms of delivering growth, creating better customer experience, or delivering profitability. And technology has to be something that is able to create impact, without which maybe it is not very relevant.
Perfect. Vinod, coming to you.
Yeah, as a technology vendor, I'm really glad Kavita brought it up. I think it's a good segue. Honestly, I think we are in safe hands. Look at this panel, right? We're no longer talking about what the new normal is. We've gone beyond 5, and that's the energy the humankind has, is to really bring forward what the next big thing could look like. So 2 big trends from where we stand is we are, as a technology platform provider, especially in omnichannel, we are placing all our bets on omnichannel, and that channel is only becoming bigger and bigger and bigger now. I mean, just messages alone has 12 different ways of catering towards it, and the complexity is only becoming bigger. So technology is here to stay. The second one is I think Robert brought this up for the first answer for was mashing the human and the machine together. And that's here to stay. All of us thought that AI is going to replace humans, but I kind of feel like AI is going to enable humans to be better rather than replace us. I don't think they have the capacity to replace us, but they are definitely going to enable us and evolve us a lot more. I feel like that's going to be a huge push for brands. And from a customer experience perspective, not just for consumers, but also for the employees who are fulfilling this. And that's going to help businesses make better decisions, employees have better experience in supporting the brand. So these two big trends is where I see, Rajat, from where I stand.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yeah, so I think omnichannel has been said multiple times, so I'll just, I totally agree with that. I'll probably add one more to the mix. I believe brands will have to communicate with their customers and build community. It is, there was a time when Hindustan Lever Limited could actually talk to the consumer by that ad they would give on it was one directional communication. I think Customer wants to talk to the brand and brand wants to talk to the customer. And today, all the communities are residing in Facebook and Instagram. I think a trend that I think we will see in coming years is brand will have to take ownership of their community. They will have to talk to them in Telugu if that's the customer they have. They will have to talk to them in Hindi if that was their customer is. And technology is maturing at a rate fast enough to enable those conversations. I think we will see. So basically, you can almost say community-led commerce is something that I think will become more mainstream in coming years. And the second point would be, I mean, artificially, India has kind of kept competition away by saying, Chinese apps have been banned and Make in India is great, but kind of taking a certain point of view on country. But I think global trade world is flat and is becoming smaller. It is shrinking. Omnichannel retail will then evolve into global players will enter country, and I think Indian consumers, Indian brands will definitely have aspirations to go outside of the country. And I think again, logistics and technology and appetite is there. That global trade will also become. You cannot ignore the fact what Southeast Asia is doing and its impact on India, and vice versa, what India is doing and its impact in Korea and Japan. I think that will something our brand will come of age in coming years.
Thanks, Sanjay. And Dinesh, last words by you.
So I think the commerce, especially the e-commerce large players, have catered very well to the tier 1 to all the way to tier 3. But a lot of brands and a lot of sellers still are unable to cater to the tier 3. And today, tier 3 together, tier 3 and 4 together accounts for 50% of Indian internet users. And that's a big opportunity that most of the other than Amazon, Flipkart, ShopClues, they can't handle. So I'm not too sure how would the brands are going to handle that whole tier 3 experience. We are having a lot of challenge on that side because most of our sellers, even small and medium sellers, are in the tier 1 and tier 2. However, there is almost 50% demand which is coming from tier 3, 4 and there. So I think that is another area of growth which remains unfulfilled according to me.
Perfect. So lots of learnings, guys, especially for me as well, hearing from all you guys who are experts in the market. So lots of interesting points about omni technology, know your customer better, flatter world, more connectivity, more reach and global, tier 2, tier 3, conversational commerce, the whole point about building linkages, also, sort of getting to know know the customer in a much better way. We keep talking about that AI, AR, VR. So lots of stuff. Thank you everybody for a fantastic, 1 hour and whatever, 15 minutes. Time has just flown by. Still had a couple of questions we didn't get to, but thank you everybody for your time and for a great session. Yeah. And take care and stay safe.
Thank you everyone for a detailed and informative discussion. Stay tuned for the closing remarks.